So tell me, how was your journey getting into the Department of State,
Hmm.
and where are you at this point in given time, and what have you done for our beautiful culture,
Mm.
and also representing a beautiful country like America?
Yeah, sure. So, Department of State. Actually, my whole life, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. Everybody said it. I believed it. I thought I was definitely going to be a lawyer my whole life. I studied international studies and Spanish as a double major and a French minor at Spelman College.
Nice.
Spelman College is an HBCU. It's an all
Look it up,
women's,
please.
all yes, all female African American college in Atlanta, Georgia, and we're number one. We've been number one for over 15 years. Very proud of my college. And I actually studied that not with the intention of becoming a U.S. diplomat by any means. It was actually to then propel me to go to law school. I completed my studies. I was trying to study for the LSAT at the same time my senior year, but as a double major and a French minor and trying to graduate on time, and have good grades at the same time, it wasn't feasible. It's not that I didn't do well, but I didn't do as well as I really wanted to. I graduated high school at 17. Being originally from New York, we start young, and so it was not normal for growing up in Florida to graduate at 17, but I did, and I grew up to the point where at 21 I graduated from college, and I was still very young, right? And I didn't feel like I was at I don't know, it just didn't sit well with me. Like I got into some law schools, but it wasn't right. It didn't feel right for me. And I was so scared. I was like, oh, my mom, she's going to have a fit. She's going to, my mom is Ecuadorian.
They don't
And
play.
she was like, from when I was 15, she was like, you're getting out of this house at 18. I want you to go away. I don't want you to stay where we live. And I was like, Mom, I'm graduating at 17. I'm not graduating at 18. And she was like, so then you're leaving at 17. Like, whenever you graduate high school, I want you out. I want you to, but not in a bad way. She was like, I want you to explore the world. I want you to learn for yourself. I want you to live at the college and have those college experiences that although she did go to college, but she commuted and she worked and took care of her family. And so it was different for her.
Yeah.
And so she wanted something different for me. And so I said, how am I going to tell her I'm not going to go straight into law school?
Yeah.
And it's not that I didn't still want to go, but I knew that wasn't the right timing for me. So I sat her down, so scared, 21, and I said, Ma, I need a year off. Like I just need to take a year.
You did a break, like
I
a
need
mental
a
break.
Yeah, like I need a break.
Figure it out.
Yeah, to figure it out, but also to study for the LSAT, properly study, so that I could try and get into some of the best, top universities for law school, and hopefully with a scholarship, right? Because the objective was to
For the people that don't know what the LSAP is, what is the LSAP?
Sure. So it's an exam that you take in order to get into law school. It's something that, if you want to get, for example, your master's, you would get the GRE or the GMAT,
Okay.
and then the same for law school. You need to do the LSAT. Now, you can get a good score, but if you want to get into the top universities, you need to have one of the best scores. It needs to be very competitive, but also if you want a scholarship, then you're talking, right, like the epitome of it.
Yeah.
And so I knew that I was capable, but I also knew that was something that I wasn't going to be able to do while I was working and trying to complete my undergrad degree.
Yeah.
So I said, look, I just need a year off to study for the LSAT. And of course do something in the meantime, but just to study. And so when that happened, my mom actually, surprisingly, she was able to respond positively. And she was like, Raquel, you're 21. She's like, you're fine. That's okay. You want to take a year off? Take a year off. It's okay. And I said, really? She said, yeah. But what are you going to do with that year, right? And so fortunately, I have my family in New York City. I moved back to, I was in the Heights, Washington Heights,
Yeah.
and I lived there for a year. And then I also worked for Congressman Rangel. He's now a former congressman, but he was a congressman for over 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
His district is in Harlem, so I worked for him there. And well, of course, I did an interview and everything like that. But long story short, we knew someone who worked in his office, and they interviewed me. They said, "Sure, definitely, we'll take you for a year." Of course, it's unpaid, so they're willing to take.
So it was like
people.
an internship.
It's an internship, yeah.
Okay.
So I was fortunate enough that for me, having my family there, being able to live there, and have their support is obviously the reason why I was able to do that. So I did that for a year. Mind you, I'm studying for the LSAT this whole time while I'm going to work on a 9 to 5. And I had scheduled my LSAT. State of emergency happens. I don't know if you remember, but New York, New Jersey had like a state of emergency.
Around what time was that?
It
What
was
year?
like January. It had to be January 2015.
2015.
So. Yeah, we had a state of emergency, snow emergency. Cancel my LSAT. And I was like, maybe this is a sign from God, no.
Yeah.
But while that was happening, I was still on the fence. So basically, what happened was, our deputy of that office, shout out to Socrates Solano.
Shout out to you.
He's still very much a part of the community to this day. And he's always putting out just different internships, different opportunities for anybody that interned, but definitely looking out for us as part of the Black and Brown community. And so I saw this fellowship. It's called the Rangel Graduate Fellowship. And I had heard about the Rangel Summer Fellowship, but I never was able to do that while I was a Spelman because I was always studying abroad. Because of my major and my minor, I had to fulfill credits. And so the way that I could graduate on time was by doing it during the summer. Heard great things, but never paid attention to it. Like I said, I wasn't even tracking being a U.S. diplomat at the time. And so then I decided to look into this program. I said, because I was already considering not just doing a law degree, I was also considering doing an LLM. So basically, it's a dual degree program of a master's with your JD, Juris Doctorate, which is the law degree.
Nice.
And so I was already looking into that. So I said, I can get possibly this fellowship. They'll pay for my master's. I signed a contract with the U.S. Department of State for 5 years as a diplomat. This is a unique opportunity, and I think the perception is it's more like a stepping stone.
Yeah.
And the hope is that we would stay in, of course. But if you don't stay in, that's on your resume. That helps you to get so many other opportunities afterwards, right? And so I was thinking about it. I started applying to different master's programs, which you have to do simultaneously as you're doing the application for the Rangel Fellowship. I found out I became a finalist. So mind you, all this is happening at the same time, right? I'm applying for this fellowship, which was due in like November or December. Yeah. I'm applying for master's programs that are also due at that time frame, and still applying for LLM programs because I'm trying to also get into law school, right? And then studying for the LSAT. My LSAT gets canceled. They try to reschedule it for like a February or March time frame.
Yeah.
Around that same time frame, I found out I'm a finalist for the Rangel Fellowship. And I was like, man, I don't want to go to law school. And I literally just completely rerouted. And I said, you know what? If it's really for me, I'll come back to it. That's how I felt.
You know what? I believe that things happen for a reason, and sometimes we have to go with what God wants to pave for us in our future, right? Exactly. And it's a good thing that your mom actually was very considerate of your own time and your own destiny, because sometimes we take that to heart. We want to make our parents happy, especially in Hispanic family households. The moms are very, very attentive to our education, as they should, because they come to this country, they work hard for us. They put in the hours, and they want the best for us, because compared to where they came from, right? And that's not diluting their come up, but let's be honest, for some of our parents, as Hispanics, it was very rough for our older generation coming up, and coming from their countries and coming to America and making it possible for us. And I believe that in essence, we want to do the same with our families, right? We want to create another pathway for the new generation.
Right.
Now, becoming a diplomat, right? I can only imagine that you've had the opportunity to be able to travel the world.
Correct.
Can you touch bases on some of the places that you were able to travel to, and how was the scenery? How's the culture? How are the way the people are, the music, the food? What's your experience with that?
Definitely. So I want to backtrack a little bit, and I want to talk about my exposure, because I think that's super important as to why I picked international studies as a major. My parents, fortunately, believed in traveling. They didn't believe in the latest. I don't know. I don't want to, you got it. But like for them, it wasn't, oh, I get to have any type of designer shoe or the latest J's, or no. Like my parents were like, you get a white shoe and a black shoe for school, and that was it, right? They didn't
Pick your
care.
color.
Yeah, but they were like, we're gonna go on this cruise. We're gonna go and travel to this place. So for them, they felt that being rich was being rich with memories, and I fortunately had that opportunity through them to see the world. And of course, my mom being from Ecuador, I traveled. I mean, I think the first time I went to Ecuador, I was like 3 months old. I mean, as soon as I could get a passport, my mom had
Over
taken
there.
me. And every summer I spent with my family in Spain, my family in Ecuador, and that was growing up, right?
Yeah.
That's separate from, of course, now getting into this career. So before I had even joined the career, I fortunately had already visited at least, I'd say, 15 to 20 countries. That was before the career.
Wow.
And that's thanks to my parents. Absolutely thanks to my parents. And then thanks to Spelman College. Because, again, they had shown me that path. And then once I got to Spelman College, I felt the need to expand that and be a part of what we had at the time. And I believe we still have it. I'm sure we do. It's called the Global Initiative Program. And so Spelman believed in all of us as Black women traveling the world.
Yeah.
Seeing the world. So I managed to study abroad in Brazil, Salvador da Bahia, Brazil, learn Portuguese. I took French in the IB program. It's called International Baccalaureate Program in high school.
Yeah.
So I did that in high school. And so then, of course, doing a French minor meant I studied abroad in Montpellier, France. I want to say France. Montpellier, France. And then I did summers in both of those places. Then I did my semester abroad in Lima, Peru. And doing all of that, again, expanded my knowledge, because before I was mainly going on a vacation or I was visiting family, which was a comfort zone of Spain or Ecuador, right?
Yeah.
Very much different from actually living in a country. So yes, I lived in Brazil, I lived in France for 3 months at a time, but I lived with a host family.
Yeah.
I was forced to be fluent in those languages because I had to survive, right?
Yeah.
On a
I
day
can
to
only
day, I had to
imagine.
explain what I wanted and how and what I needed and
Yeah.
all of that. Take the regular transportation, do whatever. Peru even more so, right? And so that was a real eye opener for me. And so I just wanted to give that background before I started to get into, what I saw in terms of cultures and foods and experiences as a diplomat, because I do think that I was fortunate enough to have that basis before I even joined, which I think most diplomats don't have that opportunity, and they don't have another language prior to. Then, so once I actually joined the Foreign Service, I started in Honduras. So I worked in Honduras for 2 years. Then I worked in Jamaica for 2 years. And then I came back to the United States. So I'm currently based in the United States. I did a year working as a watch officer for the U.S. Department of State's Operations Center. So working for our Secretary of State. It's a 24-hour center. And then now I'm currently working for the White House. I'm a special assistant to our national security advisor for the vice president. And
That's a big position.
thank you. And it's an amazing opportunity. All of these have been amazing opportunities, and I'm happy to be home for a little bit. It is tough living abroad in the sense that I'd say in the age that I'm in right now, everybody's getting engaged, having kids, getting married, building their own lives, and been moving to different places, whether that be cities, countries, right? And I have
Yeah.
some of my closest friends are also diplomats because we all went in together. And so it's very hard for us to see each other too. And so I would say that that's something that, you appreciate the experiences that you have abroad, but at the same time, it's tough, right? I've had to miss major parts of my family's lives, major parts of my friends' lives for this opportunity,
Yeah.
but at the same time for the benefit of our country, right? To your point
Absolutely.
in the beginning, right? I'm supposed to be a representative of my country, and I'm very proud of my country, and and I also want to make sure that people can see people like me, people like you, and know that we can get to these positions and that we can be the best representation for our nation. And so that's part of why me being a Rango Fellow at the time, now I think it's 45 that they select around the nation,
Yeah.
but at the time it was 30. So I was one of 30 that was selected.
Wow.
They put me through my master's at Georgetown University. I did a master's of science in foreign service. And it's with a concentration in international development. And I also did a graduate certificate in African studies. So I took advantage as much as I could, of course. And that program was purposely put in place to ensure that we as diplomats would be the true representation of the United States, right? Because we are a melting pot. We are a mixture of different cultures and
We
different
really are.
languages and people that are immigrating from different places, right? And so it's extremely important to for others to know that, right?
Yeah.
Because if they don't see us, they don't know.
Yeah.
And so I still try to make it a point to go and speak at my high school where I graduated, and anybody I can to explain to them my job, because to be quite honest, I was studying international studies at Spelman. Yes, we had a diplomat in residence. I still didn't know what a diplomat was. I still didn't know what we did.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to answer when people ask me, and it's not a dumb question, right? It's
Yeah.
like, what do you do? Like, honestly, what do you do? Because it's so mysterious, right?
Yeah.
People don't get it. And what they don't know either is that we all have different positions even within our roles as diplomats. And it changes every single time you go to a different country, just depending on the position you're doing, right?
Yeah.
So all of that to say, now the experiences that I've had in other countries, working in those countries, living in those countries, Honduras is my home. If you were to ask me, which did you prefer, Honduras or Jamaica?
Yeah.
I couldn't pick, because to me, they're both my home. They know how I feel about them. They know how I
Yeah.
feel about their country. And the cultures, right? I had never been to Central America before. So as much as I had traveled to, like I said, about 20 countries before I had started the
Before
foreign
you started.
service, right? I hadn't been to Central America before. And I might have gone to Mexico, although it's North America, but I had gone to Mexico maybe once as a child, but not really remembering it, right?
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'm going to Honduras. I'm going to travel the entire Central America while I'm there. And I did. I went to every single country at least once. A couple of them I got to go twice, and I went to Mexico as well. And I tried to take advantage of that. And I also made it a point to say, at least one weekend a month while I was living there, I need to go to a different part of Honduras. Because also as a diplomat and as an expat, is what we call it, expat community. Basically, it's when you live abroad as a U.S. citizen, or typically when you say expat community, it's like Europeans and Americans, I'd say, is like the bulk of it. Stay in a bubble, right? You're only going to go to these places. You're going to eat at those places. You're not going to, out of fear, maybe sometimes. And,
Yeah.
and granted, there are some red zones you can't go to. There are some things you can't do.
Just like anywhere, I would
Like
say.
anywhere, right?
Any other outside country besides the U.S.
Right. And let's be honest, there are red zones in the United States as well, right?
Oh, plenty of them.
Right. So you just got to know where you can and can't go. But that doesn't mean that I shouldn't experience. That doesn't mean that I shouldn't get to know these places and learn the real people, like the real, you
Yeah.
know? And so I had an amazing experience in both places. I love them both. And coming back to the States, and now I've accepted a position in Pakistan. I'll be going to Lahore, Pakistan after this, and completely different.
So, traveling back and forth, right, from the U.S. into these other countries and islands and whatnot, um,
Yeah.
how does it propel you to want to be motivated to do other things to represent your livelihood, but also represent your culture, right? Especially now, in the places that we live, we're raised in the black and brown community, right?
Right.
We want to stand out because of the statistics, right? We want to break that.
Yeah.
How do you represent yourself and your roots coming to the U.S., coming from these other countries? How do you display your entrepreneurship and your opportunities that you've actually showcased in this country? And how is it going for you at this given time? And what are you invested into at this point in time? I want people to know that, because I know, based on our previous conversations, you're heavily involved in other investments. How is that for you?
Yeah. So first, I want to say, living in other countries and coming back to the States, we're so ungrateful. People in the United States, I'm sorry, we're so ungrateful. We
Thank you
have
for saying
so
that.
much the convenience we have in this country is insane in comparison to other countries. And yes, you could live in a place like Europe, and I would say Europe can be, many European countries can be much safer than the United States,
Yeah.
but convenience like no other. The United States like no other. And you take that for granted sometimes. And then you go and you live in another country, and I can't have more than a variety of 5 different vegetables on a day to day. There are times, in Jamaica, it costed me $17 to get a box of strawberries that would cost me $4 in the United States. Wow. So I'm coming home, and all I want is a big steak, right? And a box of strawberries. Literally, my mom would fill up her fridge with blueberries, strawberries, blackberries, whatever you name it, for me, because she knew I had gone 2-3 months without. And not to say that you can't maybe get it frozen, but it's not the same thing, right? And so, and that's something like so small, and maybe that sounds like, oh, like you could still survive. Yeah, you could still survive. And there are things there that we don't have here, like the gorgeous virgin beaches over there, right, in Jamaica, or
Beautiful
getting
beaches.
fresh coconut water off on the side of the road. Like, yes, they have amazing things, and I do love Jamaica for that. Just like I love Honduras for, homemade pupusas and just like the nature of like how beautiful it was in Honduras, right? Yeah, but in general, the convenience we have in the United States, I'm sorry, but there are so many opportunities, and we have everybody, majority of us have a phone, a smartphone.
Yeah.
Or you have a library you can go to and go and surf the net.
Yep.
There's no reason why you cannot Google or search opportunities as to how you can get out.
Yeah.
Okay?
And I agree.
And I'm not saying that there aren't different circumstances that might cause you to take a while to get there. But I'm telling you, if you're listening to this podcast right now on whatever social media, that means that you have access to many other ways to get out. So I just want to put that out there, because I think if you haven't gone to another country, I highly recommend you do. It definitely opens up your mind to so many different things, and it pushes your limits, because I think we get very comfortable in the way that we are.
Yeah.
Also, I want to say, don't go in an all-inclusive resort. Don't do it. Don't come to me. I'm, pretty understanding, and I get if it's your first vacation, okay, cool, whatever. And don't get me wrong, I've done all-inclusives. Like, I'm not saying I haven't done them. I'm just saying, if that's all you've done, and you tell me, yeah, I've been to DR, yeah, I've been to Jamaica, and I'm like, oh, okay, where'd y'all stay? Oh, I stayed at an all-inclusive. You weren't there. Sorry, but like, you weren't really there.
I can understand that.
So, and yes, some places maybe you have to do that. I get it. But there are ways to actually truly explore countries, and I just don't feel that people really get the real experience of places, because they stay in those bubbles.
Yeah.
And the food is watered down. And anyways, so I just wanted to put that out there and just say that we're very blessed in the United States. We have so many opportunities, And and of course, I, having traveled and having basically lived in Ecuador at parts in my life, and Spain is obviously different in terms of their convenience, but having lived in those countries, I already had a different sense of that.
Yeah.
But then going and living in Honduras and Jamaica for 2 years at a time, times where sometimes I couldn't come home for a few months at a time, yeah, you feel it. You absolutely feel it. And so there's that. Now, going back to what you were saying in terms of my investments and what I've done, my parents were entrepreneurs. They never worked a regular 9 to 5. They worked a 9 to 5 for themselves.
Yeah.
My dad is from Albany, Georgia. He's from like, I'd say humble beginnings, absolutely humble beginnings. He was born well, once I start saying all this, I'm gonna be like, what? But he was born in the 1920s.
Okay.
So my dad was born, went through the Depression in Georgia, the Great Depression. Left when he was about 16, went up north to get a better life, because back then he had experienced segregation, of course.
Can only imagine back then. Yeah.
Yeah,
For sure.
being African American, of course. He was African American, and he said, I need to get out of here. So he started off in New Jersey, and owned a laundry cleaners, and then worked his way up, and then he went to New York City, and he owned his own construction firm and also his own medical center. And so he had his medical center in Harlem, and his construction firm was actually he was the minority contractor that built different things in New York City, just like the Javits Center, which is
Wow.
like a pretty big deal in the 80s. And
Yeah.
so
And it's still a big deal, I would say,
yeah.
to say that.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned, not to cut you off, because I know that you mentioned how your mother played a role, right? And I get it that sometimes some of our parents are absent out of our lives, but you can't take away from the parents that actually have been there for us.
Yeah.
And our fathers are as important as our mothers are,
100%.
and they play a big role in our life. And and I want to say that, because as a person that, and this is me sharing a little deeper on my end, even though my father wasn't there all the way, as a father now, I understand that life sometimes redirects you in different places and different directions. And raising your child or your kids is a priority, but is a big responsibility.
Absolutely.
And it is our job to do everything that we possibly can for our kids. How did your father play a role in your life in terms of all the things that you've accomplished in life?
Wow. Honestly, I'm still learning the things he's done. So he passed away when I was 12. And to this day, I'm still learning all of the things he accomplished. I didn't know he used to be a DJ. I didn't know he was a United Nations pager, he was one of the first blacks to do that, which is basically like a typing job for the United Nations. He was a part of 100 Black Men in New York. Like I said, he was a minority contractor building some major projects in New York City at the time. And then, of course, a part of the community, giving back. He helped with the Armory, which was a tennis. So my dad was also a tennis pro, had time to be a tennis pro, played golf as well. I don't know. And I look at all of that and I'm like, how did he have the time for all of this, right? It makes no sense to me. I'm like, if he has the time for all of that, I absolutely have to succeed. Like there's no option, because he did everything possible to leave where he came from, and again, he grew up in Albany, Georgia, in a one bedroom with, it was three kids, him, and he was the youngest, and it was a tough life, right? It was definitely not an easy way of life, and especially in segregation. Super smart. I mean, I think he skipped 2 grades. At 4 years old, my aunt will tell the story that he showed up to school with them. Back then it was like a little more informal.
Yeah.
And he showed up to school and he's like, I want to go to school now. And she's like, you're only 4 years old. He's like, I promise you I can go to school now. And the teacher tested him and was like, yeah, you actually can go to school now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. It's just maybe determination was what drove him. But he always was thinking one step ahead. And if you talk to even my uncles on my mom's side,
Yeah.
who came to this country later. So my mom was the first to come, and then she met my dad, and she was a student in the United States.
So you're first generation.
I'm first generation, yeah.
Okay.
So that's another person I could speak about is my or both two people I could speak about are my abuelitos. You know, my grandpa, my grandma. They sacrificed everything to make sure that their kids got out of Ecuador and got a better life. And not to say that they couldn't go back to Ecuador, that they couldn't do well, but they wanted to at least go away at 18, get a good education, and then do whatever they want, but at least they have that education. Yeah. So there's that from that side, right? But my mom's siblings, her younger brothers and sisters, you know, you could talk to them, and they all they do is speak highly of my dad and how basically he was like a father figure to them too, right? Yeah. So he definitely played that role, not just for me, but for other people before I even existed, right? And I remember growing up, and he would say, "Remember, you're black, you're Latina, and you're a woman." He said, "So there's always going to be a space that you're going to be in that somebody's not going to like you."
Absolutely.
Right. And so he told me that when I was 6, 7 years old, was you know, instilling that in me. And it's crazy because I look back now, and even though he passed when I was 12. He used to have deep conversations with me. And whether I could fully process them or not, right, at the time, I can look back and I feel like maybe subconsciously it planted a seed in me, right? Yeah. And I do remember I needed to have straight A's. If I came home with a B, he'd be like, you could do better. You know? And it wasn't like, oh, you're on punishment, but he'd be like, it was just disappointment. And I was like, dang, you know?
Trying to build that edge around you.
Absolutely. He's like, why didn't you get a 100? And I'm like, well, Dad, but it's studying, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. We'll study harder, you know? And he just kept pushing me and pushing me. They never had to force me to do my homework. They never had to force me to study necessarily. I mean, I thankfully was a disciplined, you know, child in that sense, but I think it was because of the standards that my parents had held with me. My mom was the same way. My mom graduated high school at 16, super smart. Yeah. You know, went to Canada, went to high school there to learn English, then came to the United States and did her undergrad, you know, and so they had already given me that basis. Yeah. And again, learning from both of them and seeing how they both came from humble beginnings, but from different walks of life, right? Because one came as an immigrant, learning a whole new language, learning a whole new lifestyle, right? My dad coming from the South, you know, in its segregation, dealing with that, coming up north, and then having to get it on his own, and again have no support system for that. Two really go-getter people, right? Yeah. And so between the both of them speaking to me about their expectations for me, at the end of the day, success is what you make it. Success, everybody can define success differently. Right. But as long as you know what success looks like for you, and you can truly, honestly say that you feel successful, I think that's what matters the most. But of course, what your parents want is for you to be happy. Your parents want you to be comfortable in life. Your parents want you to move forward and just be proud of of all the sacrifices they made for you, right? Yeah. And so absolutely my dad played a role, and although he didn't choose to be absent by choice, right? It wasn't by choice to be absent in my life, but the impact he made in my life up until that point, and then the impact he put on other people around me that created an environment to continue to teach me even today. Yeah. From what he did for me in the past, it's incredible for me. I can look back at all these things that my mom has in storage, and I'm like, wait, Ma, what? He did this? He did that? He got this award? He did... And it's like, he didn't even... I feel like there are so many questions I have, right? And I'm like, dang, I just hope he's proud, right? I just hope he's proud. And of course, my mom being basically a single mother, right? At the age of since from the age of 12 to 17, raising me
Mm-hmm.
on her own, right? I was an only child from her, and she had to still try to figure it out and make sure that I succeeded. And she did some things that maybe was in the honor of my dad, knowing that this is how he would have wanted it, and other
Yeah.
things she just had to figure it out on her own,
Yeah. She
right?
had to be strong
She had to
and
be
figure it
strong
out.
and she had to figure it out. But she always made sure that I knew about both of my cultures. And of course, it led me to going to Spelman College. You know, my dad, like I said, is from Albany, Georgia. I had family in Atlanta. And since before he even passed, I was like, I'm going. Matter of fact, I think I was like, I'm going to Morehouse. And then they'd be like, you mean
Yeah.
Spelman? But I didn't have family that went to Spelman. I had family
Yeah.
that went to Morehouse. So, you know, as a
Okay.
kid, I was like, I didn't realize that it was like, you know, male or female or whatever. So I didn't know. But I had already had that instilled in me to go to
Very
an
reputable
HBCU.
colleges and universities
Yeah.
down south, by the way.
Hmm.
If you don't know, please do your research.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's not,
Spelman.
just not anybody can go to those colleges and get that type of education. And Atlanta definitely has one of the best educational systems in the country.
For HBCUs.
Just
Not
know
for
that.
public schools, but for
Just
HBCUs.
know that. So to me, I hear the southern comfort and the warm heart of an Hispanic woman is what drove you to be who you are today. A very successful young woman with a lot of drive, a lot of dedication. I can hear it. I can feel the energy. I can feel your father's energy right through you. And I would say that he's very proud of you today.
Thank you.
All right. So rest in peace to him. Much respect to him. I want to say, again, I want to elaborate on something. As a Hispanic, and part of our culture, growing up in our cities, we grow up in black and brown communities. And I feel that we come within the same roots on however you want to look at it. We come from the struggles. We come from in places where we feel like we don't fit in. But guess what? One of the things that we do is figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We overcome, we strive, we come to this country, we look at the opportunities that we have at hand.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, we look at opportunities the way that other people that are actually born in this country don't even look at.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Going back to what you were saying, I feel like a lot of people in this country are very comfortable. They don't see the opportunities that are right in front of them. Going through these changes in the United States and just kind of overall the whole world, it's important for us to be able to share these stories with our communities because we want them to know that they have an opportunity to be great in life. Yeah. You can go to those colleges, you can go to those universities. Just because of your background, your heritage, your religion, doesn't mean anything.
Right.
You put your mind into it, you're going to be able to attain and accomplish anything in life. And much respect to the black and brown community. Keep doing what you're doing. Don't give up. I don't care what anybody says. I truly believe that in this country, we have come together more than ever. And I'm not going to allow media, yes, media, I'm talking to you, to tell me otherwise. Because I feel it. I know that's what's happening. Mm-hmm. And we have to stick together. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we have to bring light to our people. You'll be surprised that the little experiences and stories that we have to share with people, you'll be surprised how that can turn somebody's life around. What you're telling me today, somebody else out there has probably gone through the same thing or have the same experience. And obviously you have your own, but they can have similar experiences and they might not understand how to display that. A lot of people hone a lot of things in, and it's a world of opportunity. So you gotta, when it's there, take it, right? So going back to the opportunities that you have now, coming back from doing you're playing your position right in the diplomat department and in the States here. what is it that you look forward to now? What type of service would you like to do for our people here as Hispanics, in the Black and Brown community? What are some of the work that you feel that can be done that hasn't been done? Because I feel like there's always little gaps, right? So we can be walking towards a bigger goal, but in your opinion, right, what are some of the things that we can work on, that you don't see that's happening right now? And, it can be in various sizes or in various ways, but if you can say one thing, what's something that you would probably say or suggest that we should do as a community to enhance our opportunities in life and to entrepreneurship and things like that, to work together?
Right. Well, I'm thinking in two spheres right now, right? One is my day-to-day job, which is being a U.S. diplomat, which is based on international relations, diplomacy. And in that realm, we basically don't exist. We just don't exist. That's why we have the Rangel Fellowship, which is what I'm a part of. And we also have another one called Pickering Fellowship. If you don't know about it, please Google it. The Pickering and the Rangel Fellowship will give you the opportunity to go do a master's in international studies. They will pay for it and pay for living stipend as well while you're going through that master's. It lets you just focus on that during that time frame. You get to do 2 internships. One is abroad, working at a U.S. embassy, so you already get a taste of what it's like to be a diplomat before you even become a diplomat, which is so key, because many diplomats, they do their first tour, and I can see the difference. When I did my internship and I became a first tour diplomat, I knew things that they didn't know. So I felt a little bit ahead of the curve, which is important as a Black and brown skinned person, right?
Yeah.
So you do that, and you do your internship domestically, where you work on what we call the Hill. So in Washington, D.C., you work for Congress in some capacity. I had already worked for Congressman Rangel, like I told you, for a year. And so because of that, I didn't work for a congressman on the Hill. I instead worked for the Congressional Research Service, the Library of Congress specifically, but then Congressional Research Service under the Foreign Affairs, Defense, and Trade Division. So there are so many opportunities you can do in international studies. The mecca of it is Washington, D.C. I'm not saying you can't do your master's somewhere else, but they could tell you everything they want to tell you. At the end of the day, if you're not in Washington, D.C., you just can't network the same way when it comes to international studies. That's just the take that I have. Not saying you have to go to Washington, D.C. for your undergrad, but definitely for your master's program, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, D.C. is where to go.
Right, whether that be Georgetown, GW, American, so on and so forth, right? The list goes on. Johns Hopkins, SAIS. So that's one side of it. I notice a lot of us just are not in those spaces, and so I try to encourage people that look like us to be a part of the U.S. Department of State. And you don't have to be a diplomat and work abroad. You could actually be a civil servant and work in Washington, D.C., and that can be your career as well.
Okay.
So for some people that are like, oh, I can't see myself living 20 years abroad, okay, that's fine. Mm-hmm. You can work for the U.S. Department of State locally in Washington, D.C., and you still have a very good career. You get, paid,
That's good to know.
You get paid, and, it's fine. So there's that aspect that I definitely want to highlight, because again, I don't think that there's enough of us in those avenues. But part of that as well is that when you're in your undergrad, just because you're not studying international studies or you're not studying a foreign language like I did, doesn't mean you can't study abroad.
Yeah.
I had friends that were biology majors. They were pre-med or whatever. They were studying abroad too. So depending on the university you're in or the college you're in, Spelman had a program in Brazil that allowed girls who were pre-med, and they could study in Brazil for the summer and still get credits, right? So it depends, of course, on your college or university, but take advantage of that, right? Yeah. Learn another language. Learn how other people think. Because even if that's not the career you want to do, I'm sorry, but the way it opens up your mind, I can't explain it. I can't explain that to you.
Yeah.
You got to figure that out on your own, because ultimately you're going to have a different outlook on life based on what you saw somewhere else, because you were so used to the way you lived your life on a day to day. Then now you go somewhere else, you said, I'm just a drop in the bucket. Right?
Yeah.
And so it teaches you that. So there's that side. The other sphere is, to your point, entrepreneurship, right? Going back to my parents, they were entrepreneurs. You know, my dad started that off on his own. And then when my mom and my dad got together, then my mom helped build that medical clinic with him for like 25 years. They had that together. And they were a team. And so again, they worked 9 to 5, but they worked for themselves, right? So if they had to stay from 6 to 10, you know, like 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., they'll do that. Why? Because it's money in their pockets too, right?
Yeah.
They control their business. They control when they could take their vacations. They controlled all of that, right? And so for me to work a 9 to 5 right now, it's hard. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's not meant for me. At the end of the day and long term, I don't think it's meant for me.
Yeah.
But it's also because I've seen my examples in my life from both of my parents was them working for themselves.
Yeah.
Not working for anybody else. However, the job that I do have is an incredible opportunity, and it's something I love to do. So I think as long as you love what you're doing, even if you're working for somebody else, I don't knock it. You know, I'm doing it myself, right? But at the same time, I'm not trying to be married to it. The only thing I'm trying to be married to other than God is my husband. And whenever I start, you know, a family, okay, great. But I'm not trying to be married to a job where I feel like I can't get out of, where I feel like I'm a slave to. That's what I don't want.
Yeah.
And so because I saw my parents, they had multiple streams of income before this became such public knowledge, I would say.
Yeah.
I saw that through them. They owned multiple properties. They would buy, hold, and then sell. And, you know, sometimes it was just land. Sometimes it was actual properties. They never did like flipping, you know, buying an old home and renovating and flipping, which I think is more of a thing nowadays, you know, in the last 20 years. But my parents
But there's other ways of accumulating.
Exactly. They have been doing, I'd say, more of the traditional way. But I saw that through them. And I said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So I bought my first property at, I'd say it's been maybe 4 years now. I bought my first property, and I wish I had bought it as a multifamily. Back then I didn't have that knowledge about a multifamily. And again, even though my parents had done well for themselves, they were still more in that traditional route, right? And so just because you're doing something and you're doing it well doesn't mean that there aren't other ways to do it or better ways to do it, right? We all learn.
Of course, live and learn.
Exactly. So I did that. I owned my home in Atlanta, and since then I now have 7 properties and just been building it slowly, but some are Airbnb and some are long-term rentals. You just have to figure out what makes sense for you based off of the place and where it is. And economically, if you want to do, let's say, half the year Airbnb and half the year long-term rental, do that too, right? It depends. If you have a high season, low season like Florida, where I can make triple the amount of money January through March, I can make triple what I would make on just a regular rental income, like a long-term rental income. Of course, I'm going to do that.
Of course.
And then April through December, do long-term rental. Whereas another property I have, which actually a lot of people don't think about, you can own a 55 and up. You're in Florida. You know, Florida is top 3 in the United States in terms of retirement states. Yeah. You can get a 55 and up.
And what exactly is 55 and up? In terms of it's the age?
Yep, the age. You have to be 55 and up in order to be in that place. It's not a retirement home. It's not a nursing home, which people get into that too. Yeah. I'm not saying you can't do that. I haven't gotten into that. But these are residential buildings that are specifically for people who are age 55 and up. And so they can still be working. right? It doesn't necessarily mean that it's somebody that is 80 years old or 90 years old and you're afraid that they can't afford it. Because if they're 80 years old and they're trying to rent from you, they probably have a pension. I mean, they still have to do a background check. They still have to do a credit score
Yeah.
check and all of those things. But they could also be 55 years old and they're still working, And so,
which a lot of our, Airbnb is it's become a very big thing, and more so around the pandemic time in 2020. We went through some rough times, and it definitely was something that was definitely enhancing real estate. And there was a lot of opportunities. The good thing about that you can do when you own properties is that you can maneuver and dictate what do you want to do with your properties. Like you said, you can do short term, long term. You can hold it. One good thing about owning properties, and based on the things that I've studied, is whether the economy is down or up, on the long run, it would always go up in value.
Absolutely.
Right? So you can't lose.
You can't lose.
A lot of people, when we had the crash in 2008, I have colleagues of mine and friends that told me, when I bought my house around that time, I was underwater. But come around right now in 2023,
Correct.
they're up like $300,000.
Yeah.
I mean, and remember, like, when, there's nothing wrong with renting.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with having a 9 to 5.
Right.
But know what you're getting yourself into. What are some of the things that you feel like you can give them tips on making sure that they have aligned when they're buying real estate?
Okay. Well, first and foremost, credit score has to look good. I mean, if it's not 700 and up, I wouldn't do it. Now, that's not to say that there aren't other ways to get around that, but I just feel that you have more of a playing field when you have a really good credit score and you're trying to maybe borrow money from the bank, or you're trying to have a lower interest rate.
Yeah.
The other thing is having money in your pocket in order to put that down payment. Now, some, they want to put 20% down because they don't want the PMI, right? They don't want to have that insurance on their mortgage. But you can do the math on that and say, well, I could also put only 5% down, keep that 15%, like save the 20%, but put only 5 down, put the other 15% in an investment, let that grow over time. Sure, you're paying that insurance, but how much is that realistically in comparison to it sitting there accumulating for those 3 years that you're paying that insurance?
Like
because
that.
Eventually you get to a point where once the equity in that home and once the or also just what you've paid off of it in general, right? Even if you don't do an appraisal to get a different value on the home, let's say you don't even do that, you just let it sit on what you originally paid. Well, once you pay a certain amount, which is usually in about 3 years, you're not paying an insurance on it anymore. I'm saying the extra insurance on the mortgage.
Yeah,
the mortgage insurance is separate from the home insurance, right?
The PMI.
The PMI.
Yeah.
You don't have to, right? So why just put 5% down, have another 15%, putting in investment, let it sit there and grow.
There you go.
And then when you have that extra money, now you can go and decide to buy another property. Or depending on the type of property you bought, maybe you want to do some renovations, increase the rent on it. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can slice that one, right? So that would be something I would definitely say that you should do. I'm not saying that if you got to be a millionaire before you start, because that's not the reality for most, right? But if you try to start small, maybe you can't afford to get a multifamily. However, again, I thought, it's going to be too much to handle. I'm not going to be able to do a multifamily. No, you can get an FHA loan for the multifamily the same way you can get one for the single family. I just didn't understand it at that time. I didn't understand that I could live in one part of it and then rent the other part of it. And so when they calculate things, they're calculating based off of, but you're getting this rental income from this other side of it. And so you would still qualify. But see, it's a mental game because they want to make you think that you wouldn't qualify. They want to make you think that you wouldn't be able to do that. So
they consider that as of income.
Correct.
Like the other floors of the multifamily would be added on to your total net or gross income.
Correct. So even though you're only, let's say they're looking at your net income, they're looking at what you make, but they're not going to just look at what you're making. They're also looking at what you could potentially make off of renting that one or two or three or 10 other units in that multifamily. You see what I'm saying? Now, you got to be very careful though, right? Because if you don't have a renter, where do you have the money?
Yeah.
Right? And
That's
so it's tricky.
that's the other side of owning properties, right?
Absolutely.
And it's you know, you're saying that right now, and big ups to you because, you know, young successful woman, you know, works for the states and the U.S. Obviously, is an entrepreneur because I want women out there to feel motivated about what you're hearing right now. Just know that you can. Okay, do your research, tapping into meetings of the minds. If you have any questions, Raquel will be able to help you out. Um, Now, if they're considering your income, the property and the rental income to come into play, that means that if you buy other properties, they will also consider that as rental income.
Yes and no. And the reason why I say yes and no is because it depends on if you've built business credit and if you're keeping it as an LLC. If you're keeping your business income from those properties separately from your personal income, right? So it depends on how you file your taxes. And I'm not an accountant. I got a good accountant for that. But
Excuse me.
it's okay. But basically, yes, you have your regular income, and then the way I bought my first home was obviously through my regular income. I didn't have a business or business income to go off of. However, now I'm at a point where I have business income and I'm building business credit, right? But it took me a couple of years to get to that point. You know, the personal income is something that you need to probably start off with. You can appraise them. However, you have to be careful with that. Because trust me, I think about it all the time. Like, oh man, if I appraise this, then I could have a line of credit through the property, which I could do right now, but not as much as I would want to then maybe own a multifamily, right? Like, so you're thinking like bigger.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I could do this, but the moment you appraise the home, now your taxes are going up, right? Because now the value of your home is higher.
So as soon as you appraise it,
Once
it's set in
it's appraised,
stone?
and now, yeah, once you've appraised it and they say, oh, it's worth double now you're paying taxes on that double.
Automatically, that's it. That's how
I mean,
that's
it's just
wow.
the way it is. So, I'm like, I do the math on that, and I'm like, okay, not all my properties are that way, but I have a property that is in a zone that is getting gentrified and has many projects around the area, and my taxes are going up and up and up every single year.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I'm already feeling that, and I haven't even appraised it, and I know it may double already. So I'm like, is it worth it right now
To appraise it.
Okay. And then
Okay.
it's like, so you got to pace yourself and be real with yourself about what makes sense for you in that moment. Be patient, right? Like, at the end of the day, I know the asset that I have, or I know the assets that I have,
Yeah.
but I also have to be mindful of the liabilities that could come with that. And so it's not to say that I won't do it at some point, but when I do it, it's because I'm not even thinking about the tax at that point. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
you got to gradually hit those levels.
Now, some people, like, you had mentioned something you said that your first property, you put it all under your name, right? In essence, at that time. But then for the people that sometimes are they're trying to make a decision whether they could put it on their personal or their business. At what point can you finally put a property under your business name?
You definitely want to get an LLC. So I did do that. I did get an LLC and then started putting my properties under that. However, I just knew that it still was going to be linked to me because I had to still use my personal income in order to get that first property. But later on, I bought other properties in cash. So, it just depends on what you do and how you can do it. So those properties are not in my name. They're under my LLC.
Gotcha.
Right. And so, but again, you can build through your business, business credit, business income, because you can, let's say, so another thing, You can own a property as well that if the laws allow, you have to be mindful of that too.
Yeah.
If the laws allow, you can stay in, if it's a duplex, or again, if you're in the basement level and they live upstairs or they rent upstairs, you can do that too. So you can claim part of it for your business taxes. I'm sorry, your personal taxes.
Yeah.
And then the other part of it is your business. So you're slowly building that business income and business credit, even though the property is in your personal name. And then hopefully the next one, you can then get a line of credit, or if you have cash for it, or however you want to do it, you can then go that way and then get that. So that way, when you sign those documents, when they hand over that property to you, it's not in your name, it's in your LLC's name. Right?
So in essence, is it like, are you guaranteeing the loan for the business? Does that work that way in real estate?
Right.
When you're, so that's the way it can work.
Exactly. And that's why I think it's more difficult to build that business income and business credit, because where is the income coming from? So for example, if you're doing another type of, that's why I'm saying, if you have another business that you're already generating income, like let's say I don't know, I have friends that, they have their own hair business, or they do lashes, or they sell clothes, they do graphic design, they make their own music, whatever it is that you do, you perform, you dance, I don't know, whatever it is that you do, if you do that as a business, it's your business, you have an LLC, you do all of that, that income that you make off of that, which is separate from, let's say, your 9 to 5,
Mm-hmm.
that's a business income. So you can use that as leverage to say, look, this is how much I'm earning through this.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, I think, how realistic is it that you're going to be making at a minimum 50 to 100K per year in that small business,
Yeah.
to then have that as leverage to buy that business property?
And can you prove it? So
And
that's
how do you
another
prove
thing.
it?
Are you putting it through the books, right?
Correct. Which you need to,
Yeah,
I
that's
put everything
I know,
through the books,
I know,
but
and
yeah.
and that's like a whole deeper conversation in regards to that. But a lot of businesses don't have their finances rearranged in that format.
Correct.
Where they're getting paychecks and income coming in the right way through payroll,
Exactly.
right? Because that's some banks are probably going to ask for
That's for proof.
they ask for proof of income.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably going to ask you for your P&L
Correct.
for your business,
Correct.
right? Maybe
When
2 years of taxes and some things like that, right?
Correct. When I opened up my bank account for my business, they asked for receipts. They asked for how much are you generating income, and I had proof of how much I was making through Airbnb, how much I was making through through all the other short-term rental sites, and
Yeah.
how much I was also making proof through my leases, right? Because if you have a long-term rental, you also have to have proof through that too, right? So I had leases that I had as copies that were signed by me and by the renter,
Yeah.
about how much per month. So then they calculated that, and then also, again, I was receiving all of that in my personal banking account. But key thing to do, what I recommend is that when you start to think about that side business, make sure that you separate the two. So even if you have 2 personal checking accounts, banking accounts,
Mm-hmm.
I separated them, meaning that one credit card, personal credit card, was strictly for my business, and that checking account was strictly for my business, and then I had a separate checking account and separate personal credit cards that were strictly like
For your personal.
my personal, like my travel, my hotel, or my gas, whatever it was, right? So I kept those 2 separate, so that when the day came that I knew I was going to have to present this to the bank, I said, look, this is, yes, it's coming through my personal account, but this account is strictly for the last year been only for my business. So you can see the income that's being generated through that. It's just easier because then they can see, oh yeah, that's when she, deposited that check from that long-term renter. Oh, this is her Airbnb payout. This is her booking.com payout. Okay. So on and so forth. And so they can look at that. And the same with the credit card. Okay, these are the costs where she's buying
Expenses for
the expenses.
for the real estate property.
Exactly. And
So-
then once I opened up that business account,
Mm-hmm.
now I said, okay, either I keep the credit card, which I did, but now it's not for that, and that checking account is not for that. So then I transferred everything in terms of the income, the payouts needed to go into that business account.
Into that business
And
account.
now I've been doing that for a couple of years, and thankfully, you know, I've been qualifying for business credit.
Yeah.
But it's not a, it doesn't happen like that.
It's
No.
a transition that you have to go through at the beginning stages of it before you get to that point.
Right. Especially if you're not going to put in half of your regular paycheck into that. See, because my paycheck, I'm putting into other things, right? I'm putting it into investment accounts. I'm putting it into my retirement fund through this Department of State. I'm putting it into traveling because, hey, I'm still trying to live my life now. I'm not trying to wait until I'm 65 years old and then I want to travel. No, I'm trying to do everything, live my life now,
Right.
within means, right?
Of course.
But still saving. So my personal income, to be honest, I'm not trying to have to put that into my business. See, my business is generating for my business right now.
Yep.
And my personal is for my personal life.
Yeah.
That's just what I've been doing right now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, you're leveraging your income, and that's the way it should be.
right. But I have to start from the personal.
And that's why I said,
Yeah.
you know, whether you're on your own with your own business, and whether you're a 9 to 5, right? There's nothing wrong with someone having a 9 to 5 as long as you're
Correct.
keeping the structure of your finances intact. You're allocated and you're leveraging your money the right way.
Right.
You're gonna be able to move on later on in life and be able to put yourself in a better position, right? And obviously, like all the gems that you're given, and when it comes to real estate, those are all great tips. I hope everybody make sure you guys replay the video. Just take some notes down, you know. Ladies, men, listen up. You know, Raquel's giving a lot of gems right now.
I also think it's really important to move silently. It's something that I have been learning because I'm an open book. I'm very much the person that I'm outgoing. I like to talk to everybody. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm very much that person. Sometimes I overshare, right? And obviously, at the end of the day, I'm a believer in God, and I do believe that He has my back, and you know, the blessings that I've received have been because of Him. I 100% believe in that. But not to say that, not to discredit the work that I've put in,
Yeah.
or the confidence that I have, the education I've been trying to receive, whether it be for my 9 to 5 career,
Yeah.
or for my long-term investment purposes so that I can retire early and enjoy the rest of my life, right? But you know, even with my husband is definitely much more of a private person.
Yeah.
He's much more protective in that sense. And even before we met, I was starting to kind of be more mindful of that, you know, as you get older and as you see things,
Yeah.
as you learn.
Absolutely.
But especially with him, he's like, you know, you got to be careful because I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh, your best friends are out to get you. Like, no, not necessarily. But at the same time, like, not everybody needs to know everything you're doing.
Yeah.
And especially when it's a work in progress, because you can tell them something and for all you know, they could be trying to undermine you and do the same thing.
Yeah, or doubt
right?
you,
The
or
same
question you.
plan or doubt you, question you, or talk ill of you, right? And so, like, even me sharing what I'm sharing with you right now in terms of where I'm at with my real estate and where I'm at with my career, only the people that are close to me really know what I do,
Yeah.
where I'm at with that, or with my real estate, because of those reasons, right?
Yeah.
And I also feel that it's something that I'm not where I want to be. I still have a lot more to achieve. I have a long way to go, and so I'm happy to share my experience. I'm happy to try to give any information I can for others to learn from. But at the end of the day, I know that this isn't where I'm meant to end up. And so I don't want to sit here and be like, oh yeah, like I got it all figured out and I'm the shit. And no, like that's not it, right? Like
Yeah.
we're still working. We're still trying to get to an even better place,
Yeah.
right?
You're humbled about your evolving self into everything that you've got going on in life. Like, you're very humbled, and you don't take anything for granted. I can see.
Well,
you're, and that's,
because it can go in a day. See, like everybody wants to say, "Oh, I got this, and I'm doing this, and I'm okay," and you be grateful for it, and how can you keep going, right? And be patient because there are some days I'm like, dang, I just have so many ideas. Like, I really do. I have so many other things I want to do,
yeah,
but I'm being realistic about, okay, but I can't do all of it and give 110% in all of it. Like right now, I'm focused on my career,
yeah,
and that career is taking up a lot of my efforts. And I'm also still trying to build my real estate portfolio, which is also taking a lot of my efforts. Those two things alone,
yeah,
and being newly married, and trying to spend time with my family since I've been gone, and my friends since I've been gone from the United States,
yeah,
that's taking up all my time right now.
yeah.
Does that mean I can't find more time? I can find it, and I'm searching for that, and I'm trying to figure it out. But I also have to give myself grace and understand that it's going to happen in due time, and at the same time, it's better to take your time and do it right than to try to speed something up and you put yourself in a hole that you can't come out of.
Measure twice, cut once.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
And you're right. Take time to reflect on yourself. Take care of your mental.
Mm-hmm.
Be appreciative of your time. Spend time with your loved ones.
That's right.
And you're right. What you have today can be gone tomorrow, right? So you gotta stay humble, right? And you're right. I will say this. One of the things that I've actually learned being around different businesses throughout the course of my life is that sometimes people can't get over their own reflection of their insecurities and their trauma.
Mm.
So what I've decided to do in life is to be not only a light to myself, but to be a light to others.
That's right.
Because just in case if they're in the dark, I want them to see
That there's hope. That's
that
right.
there's hope.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
because jealousy and envy is a real thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I want to bring light to that in a way where if I can help somebody change their perception of how they look at others' success,
Mm-hmm.
allow me to do that.
Right.
You know how they say love overpowers hate? And with that being said, you only have one show that's going to give you everything that you need, and
That's
that's
right.
Meetings of the Minds.
That's right.
So stay tuned. We got a lot more. Raquel, thank you very much,
Absolutely.
and stay blessed. Thank you.
Thank you. You too.